So we're here today to continue talking about transformation, but also how does this impact your technology strategy? And what that means is I have to manage the technology in my organization, and at the same time, how do I implement it if I have something new? And so the core is about creating value, capturing value, and delivering value. Innovation, it means that we haven't seen this before. However, we could see elements of it before. Disruption means you're displacing an approach people take. An invention means it's a unique approach that has never been seen before, that it's truly novel, like the semiconductor chip. There are a lot of companies that have been around over 100 years. Bob Noyce, founder of Intel, once said to me, anybody can start a company. However, the real trick is, can you make a company that can last 100 years? And that's pretty tough for a tech company. In the United States in the 1950s, 50% of all households had a GE product inside. That's pretty impressive. Now, a lot of these companies right now are struggling. GE's struggling, JCPenney's struggling, Neiman Marcus is struggling. So we'll see how much longer a lot of these continue to last. What makes tech such a hard business? It's not always clear what it means. It's complex, it's unpredictable, and it moves very quickly. And so this is why a lot of people are afraid of technology. One company that constantly pivoted and grew and is still around today is Nokia. Nokia's mission was to be the #1 infrastructure company for Finland. So back in the 1800s, 1700s, what was the most important commodity for a country? Lumber. So they started on timber. Then they found rubber. And from that rubber, electricity was emerging. And so that rubber had applications in cabling. Once we have cabling, phone systems. All of this is a natural migration. And from phone systems, they came up with wireless. Nokia was once the biggest cell phone company in the world. The problem is, and this is a huge, huge mistake that Nokia made, they wondered, how should we change our phone? So what did they do? They went and asked their customers. And what did their customers tell them? Oh, we're happy with our phones. Yeah, we like it the way they are. And maybe some cosmetic things, like a little bit better display, maybe a little bit bigger, stuff like that. And they listened to their customers. And what happened? They got killed. Because then Apple comes along with the iPhone, and all of a sudden people see what a phone can truly be. And then Samsung comes along, and now everybody and his cousin is doing a smartphone. And so what happened? Nokia, which was once worth like $70 billion, was worth $7 billion, and they sold out. Fortunately, they sold out before hitting close to zero, like Motorola did. And so they said, what field should we go into now? And the one field that's not going to get smaller and it's going to be constant is data. So they're into data and infrastructure right now. But they never wavered from their original mission. And that provided them with a direction of where they always need to go. How much can you plan due to uncertainty? Reacting to something is not enough. Focus moves from internal to external. You think about what we're going to do, but you also have to be aware of what's going around you. And traditional techniques often fail, meaning playing purely defensive, you can find yourself too far back in the race. Okay, create value. How do we create value? We have to understand where tech's going to go. We have to know the evolution of our customer, and we need to know what structures and processes we need to bring in place in order to be able to execute this. If we look at technology evolution of the microchip, as you could see, it's starting to flatten out. This is the S-curve. And the moment this started to flatten out, which was back in 2003, 2004, that should have been a warning sign to Intel. And as you could see, Intel was slow to respond. Solar panels. Solar panels have been around a long, long time and incrementally got better. But what caused this sudden upshoot over a shorter period of time? Money. A lot of technologies could be further along if there was an investment. For example, Elon Musk's Neuralink. All the pieces of that technology have been around for a long time, and I should know because my advisor, Ken Wise, built the first neural probe back in the 60s. The problem is that there was no money for it. And so being your own billionaire and able to fund it yourself really changes the game. Of course, technology has its limits and its consequences. We can go faster and faster and faster and faster. But there are implications to doing that. And one is, for example, the ultrasonic jet was wrecking the atmosphere. So they stopped doing it. But that doesn't stop them from trying to come up with something even better. Our customers change over time. And our initial customers are these early adopters. These innovators, meaning the top 1%, sucker into thinking that, wow, this is going to sell like hotcakes. And then, as I talked about before, you hit the chasm. And all of a sudden, your sales start to flatten out. And it's because it's hard to get into the early majority because now you're selling to mom and dad. Examples of how you were able to cross the chasm. The calculator and the VCR, what did they do? Drop the price. Made it affordable. The GPS, they needed to reduce the perception of risk. The early GPSs, people were like ending up in the middle of lakes and stuff like that. 3G wireless didn't take off right away. It took about 5 years, and the reason why is because not good enough smartphones to use it. And where processing became a big thing because of the price of computers, that everybody could afford it. In terms of value creation, what is your customer's needs and evolution? We talked about the progress base before. And so, are we innovative or are we disruptive? Uber, was it innovative or disruptive? Well, some people say it's disruptive because a lot of people don't take taxis, now they take Uber. But on the other hand, in terms of transportation, was it really disruptive? Or did it just give you another option? It was definitely innovative because nobody had seen it before. Craft beer, was that innovative or disruptive? Craft beer was actually disruptive because the big breweries commanded 90% of the market. And now the craft beers command 60% of the market. Cell phones, Google, Airbnb. I'll let you think through. Were they innovative or were they disruptive? What's the truth about customers? We're stable, and it's just a matter of figuring out what the truth is about us. Or is it we're changing, and it's about growing with us? And so you could see one favored Apple, one did not favor Sears. What's the correlation between your product performance and your sales? In the innovator's dilemma, disruptive technologies go across everything. And what this does, and an example is the change in the digital camera, for example. That was disruptive. In terms of value creation, this is where the mainstream market entry takes place. Here's where we're crossing the chasm. When we look at innovation and improvement and sales, they should go hand in hand. For innovators, it's about agility. How quickly can you respond to things? For incumbents, it's about being locked in and meeting your customer needs. And your infrastructure is invested into it. And your processes are all done. So how do you change all this? You're limited, though, for innovators. They can't service multiple customers. On the other hand, Incumbents can address large-scale markets. That's their advantage. You're flexible. You don't know how the disruption is going to mature, but you have the agility and everything else to take advantage of it. And the thing is, incumbents, you're only designed for increments. This is why big corporations just do line extensions. They're not really set up to do something brand new. You're putting down bets. And the thing about big companies is they don't like bets. They like sure things. And so they have a tendency to wait a little too long to get into the game. In terms of mitigating risk, you need to go out and get information. You need to go out and get intelligence. Before you release something, if there's risk involved, then pre-launch, basically pre-sales, social media, and always think about distribution. How am I going to touch the customer? Who leads? You have followers. The competition gives you new preferences for the customer. In terms of scale, do you just make incremental change? Me too. Or do you do something innovative driven? Do something risky? On the other hand, you're defined by your competition. And in static industries like biomedical, things move very, very slowly. And it's all because of compliance, laws by the federal government. On the other hand, these are industries that are ripe for disruption because they move so slowly. Last part of value creation are structures and processes. You need a structure for your innovation. For that, you need to understand your value, your mission, your structures, and your personnels. What internal networks do you have? And who do you partner with and supply with? Very few companies do things are vertically integrated anymore. Why? Because it's always cheaper for somebody else to do it if they just focus on that one thing than you. Musk has mildly admitted to this, but he would like to get out of the lithium business. He has his own lithium mines right now, but he sees how expensive it is. He sees how cumbersome it is. Has nothing else to do with Tesla. And so he wants to get out of the business, but there's no company that he can trade with. In terms of structure and performance, when you have a little bit of structure, you get increases in performance because you have too much chaos, and so you're more organized, you're more focused, and so you get a bump. On the other hand, if you keep adding structure, you slowly lose performance, and it's called bureaucracy. This is why anytime there's a problem and the solution is add another layer of management, I just go crazy. On the other hand, in creativity, the curve is also the same way. The problem is structure is good for implementing creativity, but on the other hand, efficiency and speed really suffer if you put too much structure in it. And this is called the U curve. And it becomes inefficient, too restrictive. Dynamic companies have their own set of rules. And so Pfizer, for example, has a max number of projects. They won't work on every drug, just the ones they think they're going to pay off. And they pick certain molecule types. GE had a rule that they had to be number 1 or number 2, whatever market they went into. The problem is that you start shaving off too many businesses. You trim the bottom 10% of the company. The problem is eventually you start getting into the meat of your company. Six Sigma discipline, which is very restrictive because people start thinking about the process and not what they're actually doing. And Motorola became too enamored of TQM, total quality management. And they used to do things like they recognized failure and killed it early. On the other hand, something like Iridium, which was clearly going to be a failure. It wasn't the one decision to pursue Iridium that killed Motorola, and they lost over $1 billion on it. It was 100 decisions after that to keep going. At any time, they could have killed it. But because people have careers and everything invested in it, they won't do anything. And so this is where Motorola lost its entrepreneurial culture, and that's what they were founded on. They lost their story. The nature of the tech business is about volatility and uncertainty. Structure helps in more situations and not in others. There's the liability of newness, meaning startups suffer implosion while mature companies incrementally get by. And that's because they have a lot of resources. Technology is volatile. Stability tends to be a V curve, not a U curve, meaning in tech, things crash quickly. Complexity, it's more dynamic. It allows pivoting. And internally, people can impact your structure, manage the content and the amount. And the structure can limit action, or it can encourage action. It all depends on how you set things up. And how do you handle change? Do you support it? Or do you have to go through a lot of paperwork and get all these approvals and everything else to go through it? In terms of capturing value, for example, these companies are more interested. They're not really interested so much in invention, but they want to capture a lot of value. On the other hand, inventive companies want to create new value, but these are labs, so they just want to, not interested in capturing value. And of course, these kind of companies that are both technology and commercially based want both. The drivers are how unique can you make something, what assets do you have, and the 5 forces. And that's the key to elements determining market dominance. So in terms of stages, your uniqueness becomes less and less when you're going down on this part, meaning the earlier stages, and your assets go up as you get into the later stages. The resources you build up feed the feature. The resources you build up feed the future. For example, Intel was about process design. Those fed their factories, which fed motherboards. They vertically integrated. And then the competition came after them. And they found out these factories are big investments. And so it slowed them down. And so the competition and everybody else came after them and chopped them down. In terms of you being unique, do you have tech superiority? Are you in the best space for your product? Can you scale it? Do you have the resources to control scale? What are you doing about the niche eaters? Meaning all the competitors that come out and try to take your business away. Do you lose your edge? You have too much structure now that you're not interested in creativity and you don't make bold decisions. That's what killed Intel, but didn't kill NVIDIA. And that's why NVIDIA is the biggest chip company in the world right now. Do you separate the creativity out of your main divisions? Or do you acquire somebody else who already has this kind of culture? And so that's where you place your bets. And can you be that 100-year company? That's what your goal should be. The 5 forces are supplier power, substitutes and complements, new entrants, and buyer power. Supplier power means only a couple of companies own the supply. An example of that is oil. Buyer power means a bunch of people get together. For example, the argument for the single-payer system is right now you've got hundreds of healthcare organizations that a drug company has to deal with. So when you have more customers, naturally you can charge more. On the other hand, if you have a single-payer system, now you only have one customer. And so that one customer all of a sudden has a lot of leverage over you. And that's the argument for bringing costs down. Entrance. Regulatory. Is there a barrier to entry? Are there external pressures? Value chain and profit drive competition and buyer and supplier power. In terms of capturing value, We have to create that value. We have to have the mechanisms in place. What approach are we taking? And you can't have one with the other. If you have a business, you need to have a technology strategy. Some of the tough decisions you'll make in this is, do I make or do I buy? What standards do I have to meet? Are there networks involved, other people who have to be part of this? And is something a platform? And a platform, the great thing about it is your users of the platform actually create all the value, not you. Look at Facebook, look at X. Are those guys doing anything? No, the users do it all. When you consider make versus buy, how profitable is it going to be? How unique is what you're buying? And there are always legal issues when you acquire something. You can't buy profit, but other people can do it better than you. And, of course, risk. In terms of standards, how much access do you have to creating these standards and how much control do you need to have? In terms of patterns, your vision and mission, your objectives, your landscape, your plan, and executing. And these are the patterns of strategy. It always follows the same process. People will do it differently. People have different processes. But systematically, it's always the same. In terms of transformation, if you could fly, how would your life change? Once again, I'm reminding you about what transformation needs. And when you watch large corporations fail, it's because they didn't transform. But what I say is, it's easy to tell why big companies fail. They lose their story. Blockbuster thought they were about VHS tapes. No, Blockbuster is about, they were your Friday evening entertainment. Remember the long lines at Blockbuster and everybody like scrambling to get videotapes of the good movies? And if Blockbuster could have bought Netflix very early on if they wanted to. Motorola forgot its roots. Sears, they were Amazon once. They had the big Sears catalog with everything in it. But then they became about bricks and mortar stores and not that we offer everything for the shopper. What's their story? What value to your customer? How do your customers value your business? What's the context of the business? And how does technology connect to that value? Again, 32 gigabits is not a value. What value is your technology creating? So in terms of transformation, first think about the nature of your business. What's your story? In terms of space, are you trying to reduce and condense something, or are you expanding? How are you going to transform, and what is that opportunity of transformation? Are we pivoting? The thing is, pivoting can lead to a total change in your company's mission or strategy. And can you capitalize it? But the business has to come first. What do you mean to your customer? And then if you can answer those questions, the rest are just details. In terms of the components, it's, should we be collaborating with someone? Is this something we shouldn't be doing on our own? And the thing is, if it's not a unique element, then collaborate with someone else. For example, I was making a closed-loop control pump. And what I did was, in terms of wireless security, I didn't write the code. I just found somebody and bought it off the shelf. There's nothing unique about that. Nobody's going to pay me extra for that. So why write my own code? The thing is, the device I was competing against, they wrote their own code, and I told them that was a bad idea because none of those guys had any experience in this field. And that code caused the death of that product. 10 recalls, and they finally just gave up. Think about what your company can do and can't do. What is the competition doing? And look at the strategic landscape. How am I going to lock out the competition? How am I going to lock in my customers? Is there buyer-supplier power? And always think about substitutes. My focus is on the company, create internal value they can pass along to the customer, in terms of the customer, create direct value for them. And this is your value proposition. This is what you focus on. And so when you look at the gaps and opportunities, here's an example of the difference between the current digital state and the future potential by the industry. And as you can see, the bigger the difference, the bigger the opportunity is going to be. So you can look at these different fields and see what their potentials are. So in summary, strategy revolves around creating, capturing, and delivering value. The value creation is about applying technology. Understand the market, know your customer. How do I capture value? How unique I am? What resources do I have? And what landscape am I fighting against? For example, if you're a startup, you're the little army. And the little army wins when you pick the place to fight and how you fight. And this is why they typically pick niches to start off with, because a big company can't go into that very easily. And then finally, delivering that value has to do about you as a company. What's your vision? What's your mission? And what processes do you have to support this? And they all need to reinforce each other.